Whoops. Meeting called to order at 3:12.
I don't have that.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
I so move.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and second. Those in favor? Aye. Aye. Daryl, you're up.
Okay, that worked.
Where's Mike?
Right.
Okay, everybody here, but Roberta here.
Roberta's the only one. Here she comes.
You were supposed to start without me, I told you.
We did.
Somebody that. Can't, did I not? I'm spreading myself too thin, is what it is, how are you guys?
Okay, a little overview of our water system and update of some things we've been working on and looking at some of the issues that we've been having with the water quality. We were funded for a master plan. A water master plan, we have to have one in place if we're going to get any outside funding to keep compliance with the Oregon Health Department. So the master plan we're preparing has to deal with the following information by law. It has to do an overall plan description of what we have, water quality and level of service goals, one thing we'll discuss, projected growth of the system, ability to meet water quality and level of service goals, another thing we'll be discussing here next few weeks. Alternatives to correct deficiencies and achieve expansion, ways to finance it, either locally or other financing, and recommended water system improvements and other things for water management and conservation plans.
Whoa.
There was a previous master plan done in 2001. Some of the work outlined in that plan has been done, not all of it. There were two other plans that were prepared in 1987 and 2001. The public facilities plans, those were basically prepared for the comprehensive plan updates, which is our town planning document and development code. The 1987 plan really wasn't followed. There's been a few things done from the public facilities plan prepared in 2001. I don't need to remind you of the water quality. The water quality is basically not a new issue. There was a study in the late 60s. I do have a copy of that, I couldn't find it right off, although it's not that important right now. There was a study in 1973 to deal with what we've been talking about, the manganese and iron. The study actually did a little bit more than looked at the existing system. It actually drilled some wells in Camas Prairie, which is over on the other side of the ski hill. Looked at some alternate sites for wells. I really can't tell you why those things were abandoned. I was in high school at the time. Sharon was trying to teach me how to write.
Some things are not always successful.
I know. Anyway, the solutions at that time was more chlorine and more flushing. There were also plans developed at that time for treatment plants, some preliminary plans, and those were not acted on. Some recommendations to keep upgrading the springs. Due to that's our better quality water. And some of that has been done. We'll go over that in a little bit later.
Oh, just to make sure, before I take a lot of notes and stuff, can we get a copy of your PowerPoint?
Oh, sure.
when you're done?
Oh, sure.
Okay, good. Thanks.
The manganese and iron issue is not new. Those are naturally occurring elements, especially when we drill water wells in old lake beds where there's a lot of organics and whatnot. The wells that have been used over the years, number one is by the railroad tracks on 3rd Street. It's currently not used. It doesn't clear up very well. I haven't been down there when it's been turned on in years. What we did is we, in order not to lose the water rights, we transferred that point of diversion as another alternate point of diversion to one of the other wells. Number two needs a chlorinator. Incidentally, we resampled all of these wells so we'd have current chemical analysis of the wells. We have chemical analysis, but they're old. We needed updates of each well so we could look at the manganese and iron issue directly with each one. We also sampled some things on the system, kind of on the south end of the system, kind of on the north end of the system. Well 2 is operable, needs a chlorinator. Well 3 was replaced by well 8 in the late 80s. Well 8 was looked at when we drilled it. We sealed off some layers where the high manganese and iron content was located. We didn't get rid of it all, of course. And I think Jeff right now is trying to use well 8 as much as he can. Number 4 was abandoned. Number 4 would never clean up. It was located next to where the new well is, number 9, on the extension of North 2nd Street. We did some work on it quite back in the late 80s, early 90s. Several of these wells had troubles. One thing that came out of the 1973 report was putting the chlorination system down the well, which has some advantages in treating the water and creating some oxidation and some other things so the chlorine can help precipitate out the iron and manganese. The only issue was that a lot of those chlorination systems got put down there not very well. Tubes got wound up in the wells. But we had several wells, number 6 and number 4, they actually collapsed. The chlorine dripped down the casing. Chlorine is highly corrosive to steel. Gravel pack coming in. So we fixed those wells and got rid of that chlorination system. So it's injected now at the pump level. We drilled a new one on number 4. We'll go into that a little bit. 6 and 7 are out by the county shop. They get used extensively. The north well is the one that was drilled for the suburban water district up on the north end. That really has pretty good water quality. When they changed the arsenic limits in 2010, I think that's right, we're above the arsenic amount. So we either need to do some, so right now it's not used. We either need to up the dilution rate for that or possibly look at that well. It might be cheaper to treat the arsenic than the manganese and some of the others. I don't know. That would be a cost analysis issue.
But it's a good well. I mean, it's going to pump enough.
Well, number 9, which replaced 4, we've had some issues with that well. We've done quite a bit of work on it here lately. Basically, that schematic on the right shows the well construction. I can't see that. Is that thing there? What we did is we drilled a pilot hole. These wells aren't drilled. We drilled a pilot hole for the well. We sampled the water quality as we went down. in order to get rid of some of the manganese and iron in the upper layers. Due to the sediments and whatnot from the lake bottom, we sealed it to 200 feet. It's got a gravel fill pipe that goes down through the seal. You can see one of the screens is located at that depth, which is about 220 feet. Some areas with no water. You can see we put a blank piece of casing after we got the cuttings and the results back, and then the producing part of the well with a set of screens in the bottom. We determine that from samples taken during the drilling, and then we compare it with the geophysical logs, which is a radiation log. So you can see where some of the clays and sediments absorb radiation at different rates than the sands and gravels do. So we're able to track the water-bearing layers. That was the way the well was drilled. About a year after it was drilled, some issues with the gravel fill tube. It was filled with grout. We got that drilled out. The well is still producing some sediments. We worked with it last week quite extensively. I did on pumping it about 600 gallons a minute, and we got the sand and sediment down to less than 100 parts per million. We checked that 2 ways, so I feel pretty confident on the measure of the sand. So that amount of level of sand is, we can deal with that. We can either put a separator down the well to help with that, or one on top. But we need to get that well back in production. It's a high production well. It's a little less on iron and manganese. We're going to run a camera down the well right now to see if we can determine, we're going to run the camera down why the pump is in the well in this location. See if we can determine where some of the silt material is coming in. We could go down and switch that off if we decided we need to. We ran the dummy tool down last week, and we got down and tagged the bottom of the well with the pump in it, but we got caught back up on the right. So it was actually John and Jeff's fault. So we're going to pull the pump out, run a temporary pump down in and do the survey. We need some information to get it done.
Where is that well at?
At the extension of 2nd Street, North 2nd and S. This needs to be back online. The only drawback of this well is 80-degree water.
It's what now?
80-degree water.
That's it, the one that's
But
actually,
it's cleaner.
Yeah, I can't, yeah, it is, yes.
But we haven't really used that well.
We haven't really used it.
Right.
Too much
But it's
sand.
within the possibility that we could have cleaner water with it.
Yes.
and get rid of our hot water heaters.
Yeah, that was a hard one to fix.
Does that have, in regards to that 80-degree temperature, does that hamper us in the future in usage of the well?
It doesn't hamper the usage. The other thing is, it will cool off some, but
What's the temperature of a normal?
of a normal well, some of ours have higher temperatures. They're in the 60s. Some of the others, you know, I don't know.
The north well's down in the 50s.
Yeah.
So between 50 and 60 or something.
So it means you're going to be pumping warmer water through? I have ice.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Does that cause any algae growth or anything like that? with the water temperature?
Chlorine.
Okay, okay.
That,
Some solutions we've talked about, up the chlorine residual. I think Jeff has done that. That'll help precipitate some of the iron and manganese out. And we need some more aggressive flushing. We just need to really flush it. You know, we need to try to get velocities up if we can, 4 or 5 feet per second. We just need a more aggressive flushing. So I've just been working on that. This is a good time of year. We don't have a lot of snow and ice.
It was just cold this
Storm
morning,
drain, yeah, it's probably not.
like
a good
16
time to do it.
degrees or something, it's a little cold.
Storm drains are open and that sort of thing, so we can, we need to work on that, that'll help. It's not gonna help service lines, we could try to do some flushing of service lines. That might be something we might wanna consider, maybe we can have, when the flushing, people can open their service line for a while, maybe we can have, I don't know, an hour or two of non-charge for water use out of it. Because when we stir it up in the main, it's gonna go right into the tap. We looked at a treatment plan in 2004. One way to solve the problem, there's some advantages to that. We've got the wells in the existing well field, we don't have to do anything. We just have to treat the water. That would remove those solids from the water. Manganese and whatnot gets dissolved into the water as well as the iron. There's just some different ways you can take that out. They're proven technologies. This is not a unique solution to Lakeview. A lot of groundwater systems in the west have the same problem. I think that's something we'll look at in the master plan. We'll have some costs, and we can look at some options as well as looking at some wells in other areas. Developing our springs a little more. We've done a lot of work on the springs in the last 25 years. We've done a lot on the distribution line up there, fixing the main spring. There's several small springs that aren't hooked into the system right now. Whether those are worth developing or not, that takes another look. You might be able to deepen the main spring, get a little bit more water out of it. There's some things we could look into. The trouble with the spring line is that we waste a lot of water. Because we have more water sometimes we could use in the spring. And of course then, as you know, it generally peters out towards July, August.
We have no way of storing it.
We have no way of storing it right now. We talked about one time drilling some wells up the canyon and doing some aquifer recharge storage with it, such as below the dam, right in the dam area, and then pumping it out later in the summer. That's an option. We'll look at some costs for that. That's not a small project. There's quite a few other areas that use a lot of aquifer recharge, mostly up in the northeastern part of our state. Locally, but, it is a possibility.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
If you're, let's take some of those options that were just up there, but we have so much in the lines right now. How long would it take to clear the lines of all the stuff that's in there by changing what we're doing? Or is it better to replace some of the lines? I mean, that's just a question. I don't know.
Well, it'll take a while. The more we flush them, the better off
Right,
they'll be.
right.
I was going to bring a piece of pipe in, didn't I? I have a piece of pipe. It's got built up stuff inside. I think once we had better water quality going in, and we kept the chlorine up, and we flushed the lines, I don't think it would take that long to have a difference in water quality. I think we'd see a difference in a matter of months and a year.
Is there any way you'd regulate those springs on the amount of water that coming down to where it wouldn't overflow?
No, we don't.
Mother Nature does its own
If
thing.
we don't run it through the pipe, it just overflows out of the collection structure. You know, the springs are classified right now as groundwater, which saves us a lot of headache. And it's not treated as surface water, which I think is good. Jeff has told me that the health department has had some issues with that. And maybe we ought to take a good look at maybe deepening some of the springs, the main springs, and getting away from that surface water. We probably have, we pick up the water too. Right now, we're picking up what comes up to the springs. That's it. There's just a buried collection gallery up there, perforated pipe. I mean, it's not buried all that deep. Collects the water from the spring and dumps it in the pipe.
In regards to future, can I ask a question? What I've heard in the past,
Yeah.
if we had a big siphon hose that would go up to next to Crane Mountain, we've got a piece of property up there with a well on it or a spring on it. If we had a big siphon hose, can we get some good water down from there? Or a pump system, I don't know.
I don't know the one by Crane Mountain.
I don't know if it's where the Ruby pipeline crossed our property up there.
Yeah, there's some test wells that were drilled up there.
And I understand they were really good wells, and that's, I think we should look at that. I've heard that for years, that there's a
Yeah,
great possibility.
I looked at one of them one time and I didn't get a whole lot of water out of it.
Oh, okay, well, maybe what I heard was wrong here. Well, I
But,
just, like I say, it's all just
There's that
hearsay.
one at the, Jeff was with that.
Yeah.
Now, the ones in Roger Meadows,
That's it, Roger, that's the
the
one.
ones in Roger Meadows, I've never really taken a good look at.
That's,
And that's on private property.
But
And
we
there's
own the water
no
rights, is that what
electricity
you-
right there to pump it, so the big issue would be,
well, with photovoltaic anymore, I think there's a lot of wells that are run on that. I don't know if we,
You know, I don't know if we have any rights to go in there. Well, we can ask. I have asked about the ones drilled in Camas Prairie, on the other side of the ski hill, and they did,
or two.
they said no. The Flames have that now, and they say no, they're not interested. That was too bad, because all we have to do is get it over the little pass, right there at, before it drops into the Camas Prairie. You know, the other thing we could do is we could generate some power with it after it runs down the top of the hill.
That's true.
Just
Offset
take a look at
this.
some other options. I don't know, those ones in Roger Meadow need to take another look at it. Those might be on government land. You know, Jeff? I
I
can't
know
remember.
it's one of the Adele Irish families out there. It's not Cahill's.
It's O'Keefe's.
O'Keefe. Yeah.
Well, anyway,
The best well up there that I know of is on O'Keefe property. And they were interested in someone using it, but it's not drilled up to the standards that would need to be, so it would be just about as expensive as re-drilling a new well. And then you've got the other problem of, so you've spent that money, then there's the problem, no electricity, so then you've got that problem, then you've got the transfer of a pipeline, so you might as well drill one down here in an area that's easier to access and where electricity is available. And I think in the north end of the valley, there's some cold, better water available, like the one we have at Northwell, but it's a crapshoot whether you're gonna get arsenic or not, and it's not a small problem.
What's going on with that, is it the Hammersley well up behind, because remember they wanted us to use that?
That was
water?
geothermal.
That was
Is it
just
geothermal?
Yeah, it's 3 months up, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
220 degrees.
Yeah, it's 3 months up.
Sounds good to me.
And they've talked to me since back then, and they would still like to
I
in the
would
future.
sure they'd like to find some way of utilizing that.
well, I think it's important that we look at all these master plans and try to put some numbers to it, so
So
then we can make some decisions.
why, now, my house is built in the mid-50s, so I don't know how, those pipes are that old for the most part. So I don't get, I get discoloration a little bit. A little bit of brown tinge or something to my water on bad days. And the next day it's great. But I have never gotten any chunks of stuff like people are claiming to get.
Yeah,
Is that from their own pipes, from our pipe to theirs, or is our pipe that gunky
I
stuff.
think the worst of those samples, like you see on Facebook, are coming
Exactly
from,
what I was
are coming from one property down on the south end of town. It has about 330 feet of PVC pipe that's owned by a private party. And we don't have any way to flush it, and it was put in years ago before they weren't allowing people to do stuff like that. And now there's only 2 households on that 2.5-inch pipe, 330 feet long. So the stuff builds up in it. Then whenever they have a big demand, water some stuff outside or try to flush their own line, it breaks everything loose from it,
Yeah,
and we get the credit for it. It didn't originate in the water main, so that problem is kind of working itself out. They've put a new water, they've got a new water meter to hook up to, and from what I understand, they're working on it right now,
putting in
so.
new pipe,
Right.
okay, well,
But
that
we
was
really
my
saw the worst
feeling,
case
but I
scenarios.
never-
I've never seen anybody's water meter put out that kind of water ever. You know, I don't even see that degree of contamination when we flush hydrants.
yeah,
So, you know, it gets very dark, and but it's a really super fine, I've never seen chunks of anything come out of it.
yeah.
It wouldn't go
That's
through the
why I
water
was-
meter, they have a screen on it, it's just, you know, we're getting credit for something that we didn't create or transfer.
You've said this a lot, haven't you?
Well, I'll speak firsthand. Just a couple of weeks ago, I thought I was gonna have to replace a hot water heater in the house. And I think the house was probably a $40 or $50 high house is where I'm at it. And, or it was built in the 40s or 50s, I don't know for sure, but the thing was, is Tony Brain came over and they climbed under, and it was our own water pipes underneath, and every time you would turn on the water where the leak was, I guess it would pick up the cloud of dirt and it would be discolored water. So I wonder if a lot of that is happening in, you know, all the homes in Lakeview were built in the 40s and 50s, and so, you know, that was our own problem, and once that was fixed, we had no problems. And I'm kind of like Sharon, we're over in that same neck of the woods.
Yeah.
We get a little bit of discoloration, but very little. When all these people are reporting it, I start looking at it a little closer, but it's not that bad, so. There may be some areas that it is
Because we were
worse.
on town council, and that's why we got clean
We get
water.
those lines that are.
So I really appreciate you making it special for us.
But I understand we do have problems, and the pipe replacements is probably some of it, and the well water that we're using. But I think a lot of the cases are probably personal.
So it looks like we haven't replaced at a good rate.
That's what I was going to say.
Well, there's been some done. Roberta asked for a map of the town color-coded on the age of the pipes. We're working on that. So I went back and kind of looked at stuff we've done, and I think it'd be a simple project. Project work. But those are the ones, now this doesn't include the extensions out to the prison, some of the new lines we put in, the service some areas that didn't have water. These are actual replacements of existing pipelines. So put together from 1984 to last year. We could go through and take a look at them again, but yes, we have some more to do, no doubt about that. But hasn't really been idle either. I've seen a lot of communities, small communities that
Haven't
they haven't
even
did
done
anything.
another?
There is no pipe
in
replacement
40
whatsoever.
years. So
What, do you know when the original pipes were put in approximately? I mean, like it was 60 years ago, 70 years ago?
I've dug some up with a stamped 1949 on the steel pipe.
the water system was originally private,
Uh-huh.
and it was the spring. Every town.
We mostly served the East Street area and that, is that where the, mostly the first homes were? weren't
Yeah,
they?
so I think it dates back to the 20s and before that. And then that you remember the old concrete tank, the square one used to be up there?
No.
Sure I do.
I think we're all.
Enough with the old jokes here.
That was built in 1940,
Well, anyway, I just wanted kind of an estimate
so
of how old they actually are. Our house was built 1927. Or maybe before that, I don't know.
yeah, sure.
Do we need to establish then maybe a way of working through in a prioritized list and see how many we can replace in a year and then have that plan in place? Should we not be doing that?
Well, we should be. We should be.
But we have.
Well,
It
no.
wasn't part of our original, one of those
Well,
plans?
there was, the master plan in 2001, it listed several replacements over the next few years. And some of those have been done, some of these are on here.
Okay.
I go back and look, I don't think all of them, we didn't do as much as we probably should, but some of them got
But
done.
that's something we need to do.
Yeah, we need to do
And
The
then-
priority a lot of times is dictated by how much the pipe fails. You know, if you're replacing, if you're patching it 4 times a week,
Let's
that's a
get-
lot, that's gonna be the first one that gets replaced.
That's what I say,
So
we
expensive.
prioritize that list
Yeah,
based on your recommendations. And then part of whatever plan we establish, that's a major issue.
What's happening to the pipes? Are they just corroding? Is that-
they're very thin, and they have almost no coating on the outside.
Well, and they're all
steel pipes to begin
About this
with.
big too, I
Some of them
think.
are small. Now, all of these replacements here are plastic pipe or ductile iron. There's a few places in ductile iron. So we don't use steel.
Oh, I know a house on East Street that we had no pressure because the pipe was really narrow and it corroded inside. And that's just old and you need to replace it.
And we don't use iron pipe for services anymore. Actually, the town did use iron pipe up for quite a while. We don't use that anymore, but we don't deal with what's on the private property, so. 9 times out of 10, those do not get replaced.
But I have
So-
a priority list.
Would another, I don't even know if it's possible, but I guess I'm thinking of something like the wood stove replacement or something like that, so that some of these houses where that needs to happen, if we could offer some kind of a delayed payment plan or some kind of a deal where they could replace those without taking that, which is a pretty enormous cost when you start digging your pipes up and replacing them and everything, that's huge. So maybe that's at least a consideration we ought to think about, that you could offer as part of this plan. I'm assuming we're going to establish a new plan.
Yes. I'm reluctant to say a lot about cost, because we haven't done all the estimates yet. Once we get the estimates done, we can look at some costs. So kind of take this as a preliminary thing. It just gives you some ideas. You can see those different amounts over there, up to 6 million. You can see what our paybacks are going to be.
What is that for? Treatment plan?
Yeah, well,
Whatever improvements.
Okay, just for improvement.
So, and it's based on financing actually under the community program. And that may change based on 3.5%. That may change as the agency changes. Doesn't take into account usage or anything like that. It's just a number for you to kind of get a feel with what things will cost. But what the results will be.
How we look at it, it's costly.
Could be any of those categories, 1 to 6 million.
But it depends on what you do too. If you
Yeah.
just focus on replacing lines
Or if
Yes,
you,
yes.
build a filtration plant,
That's all.
or, you know, what you do. I mean, it's just what
All different
we're gonna do,
scenarios.
put it all together and then find out how we're gonna do it. So,
Good report, Carol.
that's, you know.
You didn't solve our problem, though.
but we have a clearer idea of what they are, yeah.
Darrell, do you have any more?
No, that's all. Unless you have some more
Okay.
questions.
Any recommendations, any next steps, any,
Well, we need to come back with some drafts on the plan. So we need to schedule another work session. I'll schedule one with Rick. And we can start looking at some of the details that we talked about.
and short term, what are you doing tomorrow?
Flushing as soon as the weather permits, and
Okay.
cleaning out the tanks.
And talking to people who need to have their pipes replaced.
Surprisingly, few people come and try to talk to us about anything.
So it's mainly handled on Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost completely so far.
You always go to the source. It's the source.
Okay, if we have nothing else, we'll close the meeting at 3:49. We'll take a recess and open up the council meeting at 4.